Hello everyone, this is Saurabh from Edureka, and in today's session we'll be focusing on Matplotlib module present in Python. So let us move forward and have a look at the agenda for today. First we'll see why we need data visualization and what exactly is data visualization. After that we'll understand Matplotlib and various types of plots like bar plot, histograms, all those things. Then we'll get started with it and I'll tell you how to plot each of these graphs using Python. So I hope we all are clear with the agenda. Kindly give me a quick confirmation so that I can move forward. Devon says move forward. So does Pooja, Siddharth, Neha, Theon, Jason. Fine guys. I've got a confirmation from everyone. So we'll move forward and we'll understand why we need data visualization. So why we need data visualization. Now let us take an example. Suppose you work in an organization as an analyst and you have made certain analysis. Now you need to show that analysis to your boss or your CEO or whatever. Now you can understand it by just looking at the Excel sheet and the numbers. But the other person is not an analyst. He's not that technically sound as you are. So what do you need to do? You need to present your analysis or your data in such a way that the other person can understand. And how you can do that? You can do that by representing it in the form of a graph. And it is a well-known fact that human brain can process information easily when it is in pictorial or graphical form. So that is one of the key reasons why we use a data visualization in order to understand the trend better and make better decisions. So let us move forward and understand one more reason why we need data visualization. Now basically it allows us to quickly interpret the data, like whatever the trend the data is showing us. Now basically it allows us to quickly interpret the data. So just by looking at the graph, we can understand what the data is about and what is the trend. But if you are not from an analytics background and you see just the Excel sheet, then it is very tough for you to understand it. So if it is there in the graphical form, you'll quickly understand it and you can experiment as well. Now what happens if you want to change certain variables and see what will be the outcome? So with the help of the graphical representation of your data, that will give you a very good idea as to what all variables are useful for you and what all variables are useless. You don't need to include in your analysis. In order to perform that experiment in an efficient and a quick way, you need data visualization. So guys, these were the two key reasons why we need a data visualization. If you have any questions or doubts, you can ask me. Or if you understood everything, then you can give me a thumbs up so that I can move forward. Brian says move on, so does Neha, Pooja, Siddharth, Theon, Jason. Fine guys. So we'll move forward and understand what exactly is data visualization. So what is data visualization? So data visualization is nothing but the presentation of your data in a pictorial or a graphical format. Now why we do that? We do that in order to enable the decision makers of an organization to see the analytics presented visually so that they can grasp some difficult concepts or identify new patterns. Now since we have discussed a lot about data visualization, so guys, I want answers from you all. Give me some example where I can use data visualization in an organization. I don't need a lot of examples, just 2 or 3, that'll be enough. I just want to know whether you have understood it or not. Alright, so Devon says you can use it in finance. Alright, in what way can I use it in finance? Can you please tell me that, Devon? Alright, so he says in order to find out where should I invest my money. Yeah, that is one perfect use case, I would say. Alright, fine guys. So I'll give you a couple more cases where you can use it. You can use it to identify the areas that need attention or improvement in the organization. You can even use it in order to clarify which factors influence customer behavior. Now, it might depend on the season or anything else basically. Now, you can even use it to understand which products to place where. Now, this is very important, guys. Obviously, you won't be selling jackets or sweaters in summers, right? You won't be selling shaving cream to kids. So you should know what are your target audience and where you are selling your product and to whom are you selling your product. So that is one very important field where we need data visualization, and you can even use it to predict sales volume as well. Fine guys, so we have looked at a lot of examples for data visualization. Now let us understand the diagram that is there in front of your screen. So it basically tells you about how to find insights from your data. Now for that we need data visualization. It plays a very, very important role and it is one of the major applications of data visualization in order to find insights in data. Now there's a process that has to be followed in order to do that. So it starts with visualize. The first step is visualize. So basically you understand what your data is. You visualize it in a form of a graph and you understand what that data is actually talking about. Now we'll take an example. Suppose you have a data set that tells you about the youth percentage of unemployed youth country-wise from 2010 to 2014. Alright, so you have that data, then you visualize it. The moment you visualize it, you'll get to know that, okay, it's fine. This country has a lot of unemployed youth, whereas this country is doing pretty good. So accordingly, you just grasp it pretty easily when you visualize it. After that, you make certain analysis. Now, what sort of analysis? Suppose if I take the same example forward, if I want to find out the change in the percentage of unemployed youth between 2011 to 2010, so that will come under analysis phase. So I'll analyze it. After that, what comes is document insight. Now you have done that analysis, but what is the outcome of that analysis? Now I'll see what all countries are doing good. I mean, the percentage of unemployed youth have gone up and which country it has gone down, and from what all countries it is stable. There's no change. So we'll see that and make a document. After that, we transform our data set. Now there might be certain fields in my data that I don't need. So at that time, what I'll do, I'll transform my data set, I'll remove those fields, or there might be certain fields that I need and which is not there. So I'll add those fields. So accordingly, I'll transform my data set. And once I've done that, I'll again visualize it in order to understand what my data is now talking about. And this process will keep on repeating. So this is how you find insights in data, where visualization plays a very, very important role, guys. So I hope you have understood this flow. So we have understood what exactly is data visualization. If you have any questions or doubts, you can ask me. Alright, so Neha is asking, Matplotlib is used for data visualization. Yes, Neha, it is used for data visualization. We are going to see that in the next slide. Any other questions? Alright, so we have no questions, so we'll move forward and understand what exactly is Matplotlib. Now it is very important for us to understand as to how Matplotlib works fundamentally. Now it is pretty easy and pretty basic. You have some data, then your computer will draw that data to a canvas of some sort, but it is only in the computer's memory. Now once your computer has drawn that data, you can show that data. So this is so the computer can first draw everything and then perform the more laborious task of showing it on the screen. Very basic. I know you might find it pretty lame, but it is very important for us to understand how fundamentally Matplotlib works. So you have an example in front of your screen. So again, we have that data in which we have country-wise percentage of unemployed youth. And I've done some analysis and I've shown it graphically, the percentage change in the unemployed youth country-wise between 2010 to 2011. So this is how that plot looks like. It is nothing but a bar plot. Now there are various types of plots available. We'll have a look at few of those in the next slide. So we'll move forward and see what are the various types of plots. So I've listed down 6 types of plots. First is the bar graph, then histograms, scatter plot, pie plot, hexagonal bin plot, and area plot. We are going to plot all these things in today's session with the help of Matplotlib module. So we'll move forward and we'll get started with it. We'll write our first Matplotlib code. So here's the most basic code in order to generate one of the most simple graph. So let me explain to you this code. First of all, what I've done, I have imported pyplot from Matplotlib as PLT. Then I'll use this pyplot in order to plot the graph in the canvas. And then finally, I'll use this PLT, which is nothing but pyplot, in order to show what we have got. All right. So pretty basic, guys. So what I'll do, I'll open my PyCharm and execute this practically. All right. So before I open my PyCharm, we have a question from Brian. He's asking, what are the tools that are used for data visualization? All right, so I'll tell you, we have a lot of tools available in market nowadays. We have Tableau, we even use R, Python. So for Python, we need to import the Matplotlib library. So there are many, many tools available in the market right now. So I hope this answers your question, Brian. All right, so he says yes. Fine. So I'll open my PyCharm and I'll execute this practically. So this is my PyCharm, guys. So over here, I'll first create a Python file with .py extension, and I'm going to name it as first code. Now over here, I'll first import pyplot from Matplotlib. So for that, I'll type from Matplotlib import pyplot as PLT. Now this PLT is pretty much similar to NP that we were using in NumPy array, if you can recall. So it is not mandatory to use PLT only. You can use whatever you want, but a lot of people use it as PLT, and I'll keep it that way. Now our next step is to plot our graph to the canvas. So for that, what I'll do, I'll type in plt.plot and I'll write in here my X and Y axis values. So for X axis, I'll keep it as 1, 2, 3. Then for Y axis, I'm gonna add values such as 4, 5 and 1. So this will plot our graph in the canvas. Now final step is to show that plot. How we'll do that? I'll just type in here plt.show and we'll execute this and see what happens. Run first code and yep, this is how our first basic graph looks like. So with 3 lines of code, you have got this graph. So we'll move forward and we'll see how to actually add title labels to our graph. For that, I'll open my slides once more. So now, of course, there are some problems with our graph. First off, we have actually learned in school that we are supposed to put labels on each axis. And we need to also add a title to our graph. It actually doesn't make sense. Our graph doesn't make sense if there are no X and Y axis labels and a title. So you don't know what is axis, you don't know what is X axis, you don't know what is Y axis and what is the graph about. Plus, in terms of programming, it is very unlikely that you'll be actually filling in data to the plt.plot function. Now over here, you can notice that we are actually filling in data like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Instead, you will be passing variables into it. All right. So it should be something like plt.plot and you can say x comma y if you have defined variables x comma y. All right. So now let us show plotting variables as well as adding some descriptive labels and a good title. How does that sound, guys? Alright, so I can see a lot of people are pretty excited. So we'll move forward and see how to add title, labels and plotting variables. Now the code is pretty much similar to the previous one, but it has few extra fields. Let me explain you that. So of course I've imported the pyplot from Matplotlib. After that, what I've done, I've defined 2 variables, x and y, and I have certain values in it. Like 5, 8, 10 and 12, 16, 6. You can put whatever values you want and this can even contain a data frame, a pandas data frame that has a data set. After that, what I've done, I've defined plt.plot function in which I have x and y. Instead of filling the data, I'm putting in variables that actually contain data. After that, I've added a title which is info, then y label which is nothing but y-axis and x label which is nothing but x-axis. After that, I need to show my plot. So for that, I've done plt.show. And the result is there in front of your screen. We have a title, we have labels for x-axis and y-axis. Now let me open my PyCharm and execute this practically. So before I open my PyCharm and execute this practically, we have a question from Siddharth. He's asking x and y contains list. Yeah, x and y actually contains list. We have list of numbers 5, 8, 10 in x variable, and in y variable we have similarly 12, 16 and 6. So I hope this answers your question, Siddharth. Alright, so he says yes. Fine, so I'll open my PyCharm and execute this practically now. This is my PyCharm again, guys, so I'll remove till here and obviously I need pyplot function from Matplotlib. So now I will define x and y variable. So in x, it'll have a list of numbers, say 5, 8 and 10. And now I'll define one more variable, y, which again has a list of numbers 12, 16 and 6. 12, 16 and 6. Yep. Now what is our next step, guys? Can anyone answer me? Alright, so I've got a correct answer from Theon. He's saying a plt.plot function, which is absolutely correct. So I'll write in here plt.plot and instead of filling in data, I'll be passing variables. Alright. And now our next step is to add title and X label as well as Y label. So in order to add title, I will write here plt.title and the title of my graph. So I can just write here info. And now I'm going to define X and Y labels. For that, I'll type in plt.ylabel and I'm going to name it as y-axis. Similarly for X label, I'm going to do the same thing, x-axis. Alright. Now finally, I'll type in plt.show. Now go ahead and run this. So you can see that we have a graph that contains the title info, y-axis as a y label as well as x-axis as the x label. Now I'll again open my slides and we'll see what next are we going to see. So any questions or doubts still here, guys, you can ask me. Any questions? So we have no questions. So what I'll do, I'll open my slides and we'll move forward. Now this graph is pretty much incomplete or ugly, I would say, because what if I want to change the width of this particular line? What if I want to add some grid lines? What if I want to change the color? So all those things, how will I do that? Don't worry, the next slide will actually tell you the same, how to add style to your graph. So how to add style to your graph? For that, first thing that you need to do is import the style function from Matplotlib module. After that, you need to call it style.use ggplot. So whatever plot that you want to use, I'm using ggplot right now. Then again, I've defined 4 variables x, y, x2 and y2, and all of these contains a list of numbers. Again, I'm telling you it can be a data frame as well, which contains a data set. Then what I've done, again I have used plt.plot function, but over here apart from x and y, there are many other fields. So don't get confused, I'll explain it to you, it's very easy. So this thing G actually tells me that the color of my line should be green. Then this is label. So this label is not for your x-axis or y-axis, it is for your curve, which is line 1. You can give whatever name you want. Then we have line width. I want the width of my line to be 5. So I've put in here 5. Similarly, I've done for the next plot as well. Then I've added title, which you know how to do that. Similarly, Y label and X label. Now after that, I'm using this legend function in order to add a legend to my graph. Over here, you can notice that we have it present in our graph where I'm pointing with my highlighter right now. So we have line 1 and line 2. After that, what I've done, I've added grid lines to my graph, which is of the color K, which is nothing but black. So you can see it in my graph as well. We have grid lines available. And finally, plt.show. Any doubts, questions still here, guys? We are going to execute this practically in my PyCharm. So before that, if you have any questions or doubts, you can ask me. Alright, so we have no questions. So I'll open my PyCharm again and I'll show you how you can do that practically. So this is my PyCharm again. Guys. Let me first remove all of this. And I need to import the style function. So for that, I'll type from Matplotlib import style. That's it. Style.use ggplot. Now define the variables. First will be x, add certain values to it. I'll add in 5, 8, 10. 5, 8, 10. Then y. I'm going to add a list of numbers 12, 16, 6. Now one more variable x2. Again it will have list of numbers which will be 6, 9, 11. Then I'm going to use y2 variable and I'll add some numbers to it 6, 15 and 7. Alright. So now I'm going to use plt.plot function, and over here first I write x comma y. Then now given a color to it, I'm going to give it as green. Next label line 1. Now line width which is equal to 5. Now again for x2 and y2 I'm going to type in plt.plot x2 comma y2 comma the color, then label. So I'm going to type in line 2, then comes line width. Alright, so now our next step is to add title to our plot. So plot plt.title, and the title that I'm going to give is info again. Then x and y labels, plt.y label, y-axis, then plt.x label, x-axis, plt.show. Now go ahead and run this. So over here I've not added any grid lines. I can do that as well. So for that, let me first close it. Fine, so I've defined title, X label as well as Y label. Now our last task is to actually add grid lines. So for that I'll type plt.grid and just write in here true, comma, give a color. I want it black, so I'll keep it that way. Finally, show your plot. So plt.show, that's all. Go ahead and run this. So you can see that this is our graph. So we have changed the default line width. We have added grid lines. We have added labels, titles, plus we can add legend as well. So let me show you how you can add a legend. So for that, I'll go back to my code once more. Just write in here plt.legend, go ahead and run this again and you'll see that legend has been added. So here we have line 1 and line 2 as our legend, and we have changed the default line width, title, y-axis, x-axis labels, plus we have grid lines. So this is how you can customize and add style to your graph. So I hope you all are clear. All right, so everyone says they are clear. So what I'll do, I'll open my slides again and we are going to look at how to plot various types of graphs. For example, a bar graph or a histogram, all those things. Fine, so first we'll look at how to plot a bar graph. So these are all the linear graphs that we have seen till now. Now we'll see how to plot a bar graph. So before I tell you how to plot a bar graph using Matplotlib, let us understand why we actually use a bar graph. So bar graphs are basically used to compare things between different groups. And when we are trying to measure changes over time, bar graphs are very well suited when changes are larger. So this is why we use bar graph. Now let us understand how we can do that using Matplotlib. Now since we know why we use bar graph, let me explain you the code and how you can do that using Matplotlib. So first import pyplot like we do every time. After that, instead of plt.plot, I'll use plt.bar, and I have filled in data here. You can fill in variables as well that contains data. Then I have defined a label, example1. After that, I have one more plot in which I have filled in data plus a label, and I've given a color as well. I don't want the default color, I want some change, so I've written it as green. After that, I have plotted the legend. After that comes legend and then X label and Y label that you have seen in the previous graphs as well. Then I've added a title and then finally show it. Don't worry guys, I'll execute this practically in my PyCharm now. So this is my PyCharm guys. So over here what I've done, first of all I have imported the pyplot function. Then instead of plt.plot, I'm using plt.bar, and inside that I have data filled in. Instead of that I can even have variables that contains data. Then comes label in which I am using example1. Then comes label. For this instance, it is example1. Then again, for one more plot, I have plt.bar. Inside that, I have data filled in, then label, and then in order to differentiate between both of them, I'm using a color green for this particular bar graph. Then comes legend, and then after that, I've defined X label as well as Y label. After that, I have title, and then finally show it. Now go ahead and run this and see if it works or not. And yes, it does. So we have legend here, we have X label, we have Y label as well as X label, and we have a title for our graph. So any questions, any doubts guys? Alright, so we have a question from Dave. He's asking what is the difference between histogram and bar plot? Alright Dave, I'll tell you, in histograms we have quantitative variables. Alright, and when I talk about bar plot, they have categorical variables. So let me explain you this with an example. So suppose if I want to plot the GDP growth of every city in a particular country. So at that time I'll use a bar plot because it has a category, this particular city, like New Jersey, New York, all those things. Now when I talk about, I'll use histogram when I'm talking about quantitative variable. That means if I'm talking about age group. In that same example, if I want to calculate how much each age group is actually contributing towards the GDP growth, so at that time I'll be using histogram. So I hope this answers your question. Alright, he wants me to repeat it. Fine, I'll do that. So when I talk about histogram, it actually has quantitative variables. When I talk about bar plot, it has categorical variables. Now with an example, if I explain you, you can take the example of GDP growth. So if I want to calculate how much GDP growth is there for every city in a country, so at that time I'll use bar plot. But if I want to calculate how much each age group is contributing towards the GDP growth of a country, then at that time I'll use a histogram. So over there we had a category in bar plot like cities, but here we have a quantitative variable that is age group. So I hope this answers your question. Alright, he says yes, fine. Alright, so let us move forward and focus on the code that you have in front of your screen. So let me explain you this code. So over here we have population ages. So we have defined a list in which we have multiple numbers. After that we have defined one more list or a variable, bins, in which we have multiple numbers again. Now instead of using plt.bar for bar plot, for histogram we use hist, plt.hist. Then comes population ages. Instead of data, I am filling in here variables that contains data. Then bins, then hist type, I want it to be a bar type. Now when I talk about hist type, I want it to be bar. And then the width should be 0.8. That's all. The rest all you can understand. It is X label, Y label, title, legend, and finally show the plot. Now I'll go ahead and execute this practically in my PyCharm. So this is my pie chart, guys, and just to save time, what I've done, I've actually copied it already. So over here you can see we have imported the Matplotlib module. Then we have a variable population ages and bins. Now instead of using plt.bar, I'm using plt.hist for histograms. Then comes the two variables, and then hist type is equals to bar, and then I've defined width. Similarly, I have defined X label, Y label, and title like the previous examples. Then comes legend, and then finally show the plot. So let us go ahead and execute this and see if it works or not. Yep, it does. So we'll move forward and understand scatter plot as well. Now before we understand how to plot a scatter graph, we need to understand why we actually use scatter plots. Usually we use scatter plots in order to compare two variables, or three if you're plotting in 3 dimensions, looking for a correlation or groups. So basically you try to find out how much 2 or 3 variables related to each other. So over here, as you can see, there is one point here and there's another point here. So these two are pretty much dissimilar to each other, right? Now when I talk about these 2 points, they're pretty close to each other. So you can say that these two are pretty much similar. And basically what we are doing here, we're trying to find the relationship between the two variables. And that is actually called your correlation. Now let us understand the code. Now let me explain you the code. So first of all, we have imported the pyplot function from the Matplotlib module. Then we have two variables x and y, which contains a certain set of values. Now, instead of calling plt.plot or plt.bar or plt.hist, I'm using scatter because I'm doing it for a scatter plot, right? Now inside the parenthesis, I have x and y variables. These variables contain data, and I can even write the data instead of just writing the variables as well. Now I've defined a label and then color. Then rest of the things, you know, we have X label, Y label, the title, then legend, and then show. That's all. Now let's go ahead and execute this practically in my pie chart. Now this is my pie chart, and over here I've already pasted the code. So I'll just go and run this and we'll see what happens. So this is how our scatter plot looks like. So here we have our legend, then we have the title, then we have our y-axis, then x-axis. These two are the labels for that. So let me close it and see what is the other plot that we are going to focus on. Now once scatter plot is done, we'll have a look at the area plot, or you can even call it as a stack plot. So basically these area graphs are very similar to the line graphs, okay? They can be used to track changes over time for one or more groups. Area graphs are good to use when you are tracking the changes in 2 or more related groups that make up one whole category. You can take an example of, say, public and private groups, okay? So before I explain you the code, let me tell you one thing, guys. The problem here is with polygons, we cannot actually have labels for our data. In order to solve that problem, all we did here was plot some empty lines, giving them the same color and the correct labels in accordance with our stack plot. We also gave them a line width of 5, as you can notice here, to make the lines a bit thicker in the legend. Now we can easily see that we are spending our day sleeping, eating, working, and playing. So this is how the code works. Now let me execute that practically in my PyCharm. So I've copied the code already just to save time again. Now this is our code. Over here I've already explained to you why are we defining these empty lines, just to add labels. Now let us go ahead and execute this and see what happens. So this is our graph, guys, and again we have legends, title to our graph, and Y label as well as X label. So we'll move forward and look at various other plots. This is called a pie plot. So let me tell you about pie charts a bit. So pie charts are pretty much similar to stack plots, only they are for a certain point in time. Typically a pie chart is used to show parts to the whole and often a percentage share. You can consider the example of percentage of market share and things like that, right? Now let me tell you guys, Matplotlib handles the sizes of the slices and everything. So all we need to do is just feed it the numbers. That's what we have done here. So let me explain you the code here. So over here we use plt.pie to plot a pie chart. We have slices. We have specified slices. Now slices, which are nothing but the relevant sizes for each part. Then we specify the labels and then the colors list. Color list for the corresponding slices. Next, we can optionally specify the start angle for the graph. This lets you start the line where you want. In our case, we chose a 90-degree angle for the pie chart, which means the first division will be a vertical line. Next, we can optionally add a shadow as well. And after that, we can even use explode to pull out a slice a bit. So we have explode that says 0, 0.1, 0, 0. So because of that, you can see that eating has been pulled out a bit. Now basically we have 4 total slices. So with explode, if we didn't want to pull out any slice at all, we would have just written here 0, 0, 0, 0. Now if we want to pull out the first slice a bit, we would do 0.1, 0, 0, 0. And if we want to pull out the second slice a bit, what we can do is 0, 0.1, 0, 0, like in our case. Now finally we do an auto pact. Now this auto pact overlay the percentages on the graph itself. So you can see that we have 8.3, 29.2%, 54.2%, all those things written on the graph itself. And then finally add a title and then show it. Now let me execute this practically, guys. Now just to save time, I've already written the code. So I'm just going to go ahead and execute this and we'll see if it comes or not. Yep, here is our pie chart. So we have seen multiple types of plots. We have seen pie plot, bar plot, histograms, area plot. Now what we need to understand is how to handle multiple plots. So at that time, what will you do? Let me open my slides again and we'll move forward with that. So this slide actually tells you how to deal with multiple plots. Now you can notice in the figure as well, we have two plots available. Now let me help you out with the code that is there in front of your screen. So in the beginning, we are importing a couple of modules. One is matplotlib.pyplot, which you are already familiar with. After that, there is a numpy module as well. So we have covered numpy modules in the previous sessions. If you have any doubts, you can go through it. Now after that, you might find this part confusing if you're not familiar with numpy. Now let me just tell you what it does. It will create a numpy array that will have elements between 0 till 5 in the steps of 0.1. Now similarly, T2 will also be a numpy array that will have elements ranging from 0 till 5 and in the steps of 0.02. Now after that, the code is pretty much similar to the previous examples that we have seen. But there is one new concept that is called subplot. Now let me tell you what this subplot does. It helps us to plot multiple plots, alright? So when we write subplot 211, this means that we have two plots. Horizontally, we have only one plot present and vertically we have two plots. And in that vertical position, this plot will be our first graph. Now you can notice that we have one more subplot that is 212. So vertically we have two plots, horizontally we have one, and this is the second plot. So what I'll do, I'll open my PyCharm and I'll play around with it a bit so that you'll be able to understand it better. So now this is the code, guys. First I'll go ahead and execute this and we'll see the result. So we have a graph, something which is like this, right? We have two plots which are aligned vertically. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just minimize this and I'm going to change the subplot value so that you'll be able to understand better how we are dealing with multiple plots. Now over here, if I make this as 2 and this one as well as 2, so let us see what we get. So we have got the same graph, but it is aligned horizontally, if you can notice. This is our another graph and this is our first graph. So you can notice the difference between both of these graphs, right? So this is why we use subplot. So if you have any questions or doubts, you can ask me. Let me just close it. Alright, so Devon says he's a bit unclear with subplot. Can you please repeat? Fine, Devon, I'll do that. So we have certain values in the subplot, right? 2, 2 and 1. Now what this 2 means that we have two graphs available with us. After that, whether I'm aligning it horizontally or vertically. So if I'm doing that horizontally I have two graphs. Then among those two graphs, this is my first graph. This is what it means. Now similarly, when we have 2, 2, 2 here, this means that we have two graphs. Horizontally, we have two graphs available and this is the second graph that is present. So similarly, if I make a change here and I make this as 211 and this as 212, this means that horizontally we have only one graph and these both graphs are aligned vertically. So we have, this was the first graph and this is our second graph. This is how it works. So this is what basically subplot is. So Devon, I hope this answers your question. Alright, fine. So he's pretty happy about it. So by this we come to the end of today's session. If you have any questions or doubts, you can ask me. Dave says very informative session. Thank you, Dave, for those kind words. So we have no questions. So what I'll do, I'll give you a quick summary of what all things we have discussed till now. First, we understood why we need data visualization. Next up, we saw what exactly it is, and then we understood how we can perform data visualization using a Matplotlib module. Then we saw various types of plots like bar graph, histogram, scatter plot, pie plot, all those things. Then we started with Matplotlib and we saw how to plot these kind of graphs using Matplotlib. Finally, we saw how to work with multiple plots using a subplot. Thank you for attending today's session. This video will be uploaded into your LMS so you can go through it. If you have any questions, you can contact our 24/7 support team or you can bring your doubts in the next session as well. Thank you and have a great day.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries and we will reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to our Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!